the king summoned a meeting of the Estates General, an assembly representing all three estates, for the first time since 1614. So, on the 5th of May 1789, a meeting of the Estates General was convened in the Palace of Versailles. Each estate was asked to bring a list of grievances to be presented before the king. During the meeting in Versailles, hostility erupted. Why? Because the first two estates had one vote each, and they were in minority, and the third estate had one vote while it was in the majority. So the third estate demanded representation according to population. The first two estates refused to agree to pay taxes. There was utter chaos. Mirabeau and Abbe Sieyes, who were leading the third estate, walked out of the hall of Versailles and they convened a meeting in the tennis court. There they stayed for 3 days and they refused to leave until they had made a new constitution for France. This is also known as the tennis court oath. What happened after the tennis court oath? It was the first time that the citizens stood united against the king. It was a revolutionary act, an assertion which believed that people were the true political authority and not the monarch. This solidarity forced the king to order the clergy and nobility to join the third estate in the National Assembly. Thus, this oath was vital in providing more powers to the third estate in the Estates General and every governing body thereafter. What was the result? On the 27th of June 1789, Louis XVI formally requested that voting occur based on head count and not on the estate's powers. On the 4th of August, feudalism was abolished, and on the 26th of August, the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen was declared. Now, there were many new political ideas and alliances which were formed during the French Revolution. There were many clubs. One such club was the Jacobean Club. The other was the Parthenon Club. Another was the Feudalents Club. And the fourth one was the Cordeliers. The women also had their own clubs. The Society for Revolutionary and Republican Women, formed on 10th of May 1793, and the Republicans and Revolutionaries Club. Olympie de Gouges was one of the most famous women of one such club, and so was Robespierre, who was a member of the Jacobean Club. What happened after all this? Did the French people relent? Did they agree to what the king said? No, they did not, because they had no faith in the monarchy. The revolution began on the 14th of July 1789. The revolutionaries stormed a prison known as the Bastilles because it represented the despotic powers of the king, and thus began the French Revolution in France. The most important part of this whole revolution is the Reign of Terror, 1793 to 94. Maximilien Robespierre was a member of Public Safety, On 10th of March 1793, the Revolutionary Tribunal declared that anyone who was a threat to the National Convention should be arrested and charged. On the 6th of April 1793, the Committee of Public Safety gradually became the de facto wartime government of France. During this reign of terror, at least 3 lakh people were suspected to be arrested, more than 17,000 were executed, and 10,000 died in prison without trial. Why did this all take place? The mob in Paris became very, very violent. All those people who they feared were against the National Convention were caught and imprisoned. And then they were guillotined by the National Convention. What was a guillotine? It was a machine invented in France, and it had 2 poles and a very sharp blade. People were taken to the square where the entire congregation had gathered, and they were guillotined. All the nobles, clergymen, their families were all guillotined. And so was Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. What were the changes brought about by Robespierre and his team? The prices of all basic commodities were fixed. All the farmers had to transport their produce to Paris. Everyone had to address each other as citizen and citoyen. All the titles and designations of the old regime were abolished. Use of expensive white flour was forbidden. Land and property and wealth of the first 2 estates was confiscated. Men wore long striped trousers like the dock workers and called themselves the sans-culottes. Women wore hats with feathers called cockades. This was a period of severe repression and punishment. How did this end? It ended only after Robespierre was executed in 1794. Did France's troubles also end with the execution of Robespierre? No, they didn't. This just led to a period of severe anarchy and the rise of Napoleon. Who was Napoleon Bonaparte? He was a general in the army. In 1796, Napoleon commanded the French army which defeated Austria. In 1797, the Directory of Five gave Napoleon the permission to invade England. In 1799 November, the coup of 18 Brumaire, Napoleon was a part of that group, successfully overthrew the French Directory, and the Directory was replaced by a 3-member consulate. Napoleon became the first consul, making him France's leading political figure. The Battle of Marengo against the Austrians, the Treaty of Amiens in 1802 with the British helped to cement Napoleon's power as first consul. What are Napoleon's contribution to France? He restored stability in France. He centralized the government. Banking and education were reformed. He supported science and art, improved relationships with the Pope, and established the Napoleonic Code, which streamlined the French legal system and continues to form the foundation of the French civil law to this day. Now let us see how Napoleon became from first consul to the Emperor of France. Napoleon became the first consul for life in 1802. In 1804, he crowned himself emperor. But Napoleon's downfall started in 1812, where he decided to conquer Russia. Napoleon's armies had already conquered most of Europe, and Napoleon wanted to conquer the world. So his next target was Russia. Napoleon began his conquest with 6 lakh troops, and he exited Russia with just 1 lakh troops left. What happened to the other 5 lakhs? Russian soldiers did not confront the Napoleonic army directly. They followed a system of retreat. And as they retreated further into Russia, they drew the Napoleonic army along. And Russia was not at all kind to Napoleon's army in winter. They had no food, they had no resources, they were in the midst of Moscow winter. Many of the troops died and perished, and the rest were brutally killed by the Russian army. The battle proved to be Napoleon's greatest mistake. After the Battle of Leipzig in 1813, Napoleon was defeated by a coalition of armies of Austria, Prussia, Russia, and Sweden. On the 6th of April 1814, Napoleon was forced to abdicate and was exiled to the island of Elba. He managed to free Elba in less than a year with 1,000 supporters on the 26th of February 1815. But his forces were defeated on the 18th of June 1815 at the Battle of Waterloo near Brussels. Thus, Napoleon was exiled once more to a remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean, which was controlled by the British. There Napoleon died on the 5th of May 1821 at the age of 51. What happened to Napoleon's family? Napoleon had earlier married Josephine, but he could not get an heir. So he married Mary Louise, the daughter of the Emperor of Austria, in 1810. They had a son who was known as Napoleon II. After Napoleon's defeat, Napoleon was exiled to Elba and his family was sent back to Austria. What was the result of this revolution? This revolution had a profound impact on the whole world. The ideas of liberty, equality, fraternity permeated to all the countries which were under monarchies. These ideas were also implemented by many other countries of the world. Slavery was abolished, and so was censorship. But did women in France prosper from this revolution? What was their condition? The women in France did not get much privileges even after being part of the French Revolution. They were active members of the French Revolution, but they did not gain much. They did not get the right to vote until 1946. What happened to slavery in France? There was a triangular slave trade carried out in France between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. There was little criticism about slavery, and no laws were passed. But finally, it was the convention which freed all slaves in 1794. Slavery was reintroduced in France by Napoleon Bonaparte, but it was finally abolished in the French colonies in 1848. So finally, we come to the end of the French Revolution. France has left a deep impact on the entire world. The ideals of liberty, equality, fraternity have been enshrined even in our Indian Constitution. So we can say that France, the French Revolution, was the mother of all revolutions. I hope you understood this chapter and our journey from the beginning of the French Revolution to the end of the French Revolution. Thank you.